And it's sad because what those pro-aborts don't realize is that pro-lifers stood up for their attackers' right to live before they were even born. What makes someone decide to be pro-abortion? This is a downright unfathomable thing for a lot of pro-lifers to grasp. So this video is to explain to them the thought process of those who agree with and champion something so obviously inhumane. In this video, I go over the 3 types of pro-abortion people, and it will comfort you to know that most of them fall into one category. Please note, I am not here to bash anyone. I love everyone and I treat all with respect because of my value system when it comes to understanding human dignity. Except for toxic people. I will be an absolute savage to them. I am close friends with people who are pro-abortion, and I do not believe that they are bad people. I also do not believe that these people are automatically dumb. Most people have been brainwashed in one way or another. And I'd personally like to believe that the people whom I love aren't straight up homicidal maniacs. The core of the issue of someone agreeing with abortion is fathomability. I shall refer to them as pro-abortioners because no, I will not use the language pro-choice since that is horribly grammatically inaccurate and scientifically undermining. Plus, if there's one thing I refuse to be, it's disingenuous. The reason pro-choice does not work for this topic, or really any topic, is because everyone is pro-personal free will. This term is what caused the slippery slope of changing other words' definitions. But moving forward, pro-abortioners tend to not be religious. Of course, there's a huge amount of non-religious people who are pro-life for obvious reasons, but I believe there's a strong correlation to this not being religious and the ability to fathom and comprehend what is not physically in front of someone so that they can see and understand it. Modernists place the foundation of religious philosophy in that doctrine which is usually called agnosticism. According to this teaching, human reason is confined entirely to the field of phenomena, that is to say, to things that are perceivable to the senses. Reason, to them, has no right or power to transgress these limits. Hence, these people who reject God possess a reason that is incapable of lifting themselves up to God and recognizing his existence, even by the means of visible things. This inability is a handicap, not a feature. Now, it is true that to deny a religious affiliation still requires blind faith, but rather in another form, i.e., a select portion of scientists who agree with whatever political leaning gives them grants. Those who are religious are, simply put, more capable of grasping abstract concepts, since in order to be religious, you must have faith in what you cannot see. Non-religious people can see they're scientists. They don't even see the science in front of them. Their gods are flawed people, and oftentimes they aren't even doing real science. Religious people can't see their God. Religious people are more prone to fathoming which is not directly in front of them, whereas those who are not religious or less religious greatly struggle with doing this. If someone is pro-birth, which is the opposite of pro-abortion, so yes, I will use that language, they are so because they can not only understand the science that is not directly in front of them, but they are able to comprehend the unseen. They can fathom that that small life form will one day become a full-fledged adult with powerful thoughts and feelings. The pro-abortion oftentimes cannot do this. They stop their brains from being able to. Perhaps some pro-abortioners believe that they can understand that that life form will become a small child if left alone to thrive. But if this is the case, they are, by definition, homicidal, because then they are advocating for the violent end of another human being. And it's for this reason that the most elitist human beings on earth are pro-abortion. More specifically, pro-abortion mothers, since they understand the basic science of reproduction and know their special little zygote becomes a child to love, but other people's fertilized eggs only become children if they want them. Elitist parents believe that their own applied value system of someone else trumps scientific realities of personhood, which is the definition of a supremacist. Even so, the rest of the pro-abortioners, I am not entirely moved to believe that just because people cannot comprehend something, that they must be morally corrupt. Therefore, the problem lies within their ability to comprehend a concept. Most people begin to comprehend things when those things are physically in front of them. We start as babies. We learn other people's faces, their mannerisms. We learn about our body, etc. Then we start our next level of education about life based on what we are told. Not just told by others, but by the people who care for us. Parents tell children, do not touch that stove, it's hot. Sometimes they might touch it. But oftentimes, if the parent has made that child feel emotionally secure, which is a whole other lecture, then that child is more apt to believe that their parent, who is their teacher, has their best interest in mind. When people go off and become pro-abortion during their later years, it oftentimes has to do with the fact that their parents didn't help to foster an environment where the child felt like they could trust the parents. If a young adult leaves home and waltzes into another environment where they long to belong or believe that they are understood, or that their new life teacher must be better educated than their previous one, they are going to be more apt to follow the life lessons of the new. That is when the change from pro-birth to pro-abortion begins in that scenario. For whatever reason, the previous teachers are replaced with the new ones, and it is always because of the offered advanced emotional support. It is not because more information has been readily available, because if that were the case, not being pro-birth would be unthinkable. No. Those who convert to the pro-abortion mindset do so based on a link to emotional support, whether wanting it or desiring to be it for others. That is not to say that the pro-birther is not emotionally supportive, but it is to say that they are not perceived as emotionally supportive. By what standards? Well, by the previous and current emotional support of the individual who is now navigating this moral ground. If you feel you have found an emotionally secure place to rest, a place you have longed for, you will eagerly drink of what your new teachers tell you about the world. That is not to say that the individual becomes dumb. No, it's just to say that the individual shifts their credibility from one source to another. The credibility of the previous pro-birth source is disregarded if the individual was not made to feel emotionally secure, a safe space, if you will, when it came to embracing reproductive science. Science has been replaced with propaganda and emotionalism. In order to embrace the position of being pro-abortion, whether raised this way or moving into the position, it requires a lack of physically, scientific, historical, and sociological information. This is replaced by propaganda from the new trusted source. If someone only grew up with propaganda, they will reject facts when presented them. And as we know, all the trusted sources of the world wish to be the only trustworthy one to their audience. They don't want us talking to one another and discovering truths and connections. They want us divided, especially on this issue. Coming back to the emotional support necessary in order to embrace being pro-abortion, oftentimes this occurs when a woman finds herself pregnant and is emotionally motivated for relief. You see, when that happens, a pregnancy, that is, a conceived human being, is now seen as a problem. Now, as our brains work, we believe, find the solution and fix the problem. Being pregnant at an inconvenient point in one's life will always be distressing. It will always trigger an emotional reaction that might lead to a physical solution that seeks to fix the problem. This is how a woman who has had babies can be pro-abortion. There's something in her brain which stops the logical thought processes necessary to comprehend that her other children started out the same way, and she cannot reconcile her experiences of her children with the possibility of another one. We hear of women aborting their children after giving birth to others, and we shake our heads in wonder. saying she can't understand the value of a life even after having other children. She cannot comprehend that that baby would turn into the same form of a child that she has countless times held before. She cannot understand that this new child would bring her as many joys as her other children have. The core of this issue, once again, lies within the ability to fathom. And that ability is controlled by emotional states. Think once again on those people whom you would fight with, who would refuse to see reason, who would refuse to understand the facts of the situation. If a woman does not wish to sit back and contemplate on how this new child is more or less the same as the others she's given birth to, it's because her survival instinct has blocked her brain from processing that information. She cannot comprehend this new life being a life form. That is not to say that she is bad or stupid or uneducated. It is to point out that one's ability to process and comprehend information is oftentimes directly linked to our emotional states. Another example of this would be if one were in shock and their ability to process and comprehend what is happening around them is greatly limited, and that is due to the state of their brain. Think PTSD episode. Another example would be one who is living in the streets, desperate for the fulfillment of an urgent need, such as food or shelter. They are not going to be preoccupied with deep philosophical concepts. Once again, that does not make them bad or stupid, but their brains are focusing on survival rather than abstract concepts. You don't give a damn about Play-Doh if you don't know when you're eating again. So this begs the question, what is a pro-lifer to do when it comes to communicating with someone who is stuck in this sort of coping mode? You cannot reason logically with someone who is stuck in this mind frame, because oftentimes this mind frame is what is protecting them from a sort of mental breakdown. Remember, when someone's reality is threatened with new information, they tend to lash out because of their need to protect their created reality so as to avoid a mental breakdown, because accepting new information requires realizations and painful growth, because it requires humility. Any amount of scientific information or abstract reasoning will be no good at all. And what pro-lifers need to understand is that if someone wants to know something, they will. Nothing would be able to stop them. We do not possess and guard the sacred evidence that is physical biology. This information is readily available at any given time. No, a pro-lifer cannot reason in a rational way with someone if they are in a state of only being able to communicate emotionally. Now, once again, this is not to say that pro-aborts are stupid and cannot be reasoned with. All of this is just to help people understand this point of view. It is helpful to remember that there are really only 3 reasons why someone would be pro-abortion. Every pro-abortion person will fall into one of these categories. The first are the ones who just hate other people and are homicidal maniacs. These would be people like politicians or abortion workers who know exactly what they ardently endorse. It comes as no surprise that those politicians who do not uphold the dignity of personhood also find no fault in drone striking children in other countries, or, leaving them to be beheaded by grown men. The second is those who are stuck in a sort of survival mode due to participation in abortion. If they were to sit back and comprehend what they had done, they would have a breakdown. It is no small thing to fathom that you have killed someone. That is a big deal. And what's more, it goes against the personal narrative that they are emotionally supportive of others. Therefore, they fight so ardently in order to keep at bay that breakdown. Justification is required at every turn, which is why anyone who is pro-birth has to be imagined into the worst kind of person alive. Pro-abortioners must create a monster to battle because they cannot handle battling the one that exists in themselves, their own internalized guilt. It is a terrible demon to fight. These people, both men and women, are in pain, whether they say so or not. And I'm sure plenty of people will watch this and insist otherwise. But anytime I've cracked open someone who is post-abortive, they expose themselves to be hardened on the outside in order to keep it together on the inside. Remember, these people are pro-abortion because they didn't have an emotional support system. You really think they're going to be more capable of facing their demons when they've got even less emotional support? I've held on to people who have crumpled into balls weeping because I've watched people face the reality of what they've lost. And it's important to remember that these people are victims of the previously mentioned group. They just had the wrong teachers and mentors, and they paid a horrendous price for it. Which is why, to the ire of many Christians, I will not call them names or say that they are evil or stupid. Because what I'm seeing is someone who was handed a tough situation and they went into survival mode. And most of them never came out of it. And that's a terrible way to live. If you are one of these people, I encourage you to reach out to Rachel's Vineyard or the Gabriel Project. Moving on. The third group of people who are pro-abortion make up the majority of those who are pro-abortion, and they are simply those who do not have the scientific information or brain capabilities necessary to comprehend what an abortion actually is. Yes, everyone knows what abortion is, but the comprehension of it, as mentioned, is a totally different thing. I've given presentations on the evolution from zygote to birth and the various abortion methods used at each stage. And the most common response I've ever received from people who called themselves pro-choice just 15 minutes prior was, I had no idea. And it's true. Most people have no idea. If the average person watched a standard second trimester abortion, they would be horrified. Most people would probably throw up, which is a natural response. Being horrified by violence towards another human being, especially an innocent one. I covered this in my human worth video, that it requires desensitization to violence, since disgust is the brain's default reaction when it comes to violence. This is why I do not fault those who consider themselves pro-choice, although they are hiding behind a false language, because I know they are likely not sociopathic. Quite the opposite. They have been taught that the compassionate thing to be is pro-abortion, and that those who are anti-abortion are somehow nefarious, despite there being absolutely zero gain for any pro-life activists. In fact, they are oftentimes risking their lives and freedoms to stand up for total strangers. They certainly risk their reputations and livelihoods. But remember, those who harass pro-lifers are bullies because they cannot fathom love. And yeah, I gotta say the line. I have a whole other video about this. Remember, I referenced that there are teachers required, and they've been taught hate through the guise of love. It's not loving to hurt someone else. And it's crazy how backwards the positions are. The people who love absolute strangers and want to literally save their lives are the hateful ones, while those who physically attack them are somehow loving. And it's sad because what those pro-aborts don't realize is that pro-lifers stood up for their attackers' right to live before they were even born. Pro-abortioners have to believe that pro-lifers don't care about them in order to defend their emotional and mental states. And the leading pro-aborts in power stoke this fire with straw men and false flag arguments. If you're pro-abortion, don't buy into it. Please, if you've been a victim of this kind of bigoted propaganda, first off, I'm sorry. I'm sorry that they taught you hate instead of love. I'm sorry that they lied to you about science and history and philosophy and theology. But it's in your hands now to choose who to be. An angry pro-abortion radical or pro-life hero, courageous in the face of bigoted hatred. Now, I would be amiss if I didn't say the following. If you are already a pro-lifer, please be careful about the positions you physically put yourself in. Overly emotional people who shut down in the face of logic become very violent very quickly. And of course, I have another video touching down on the link between lower intelligence and violence. If you encounter someone who wants to have a friendly discussion, great. But many innocent people have been attacked and/or killed by tolerant radical leftists. As always, make sure the person you're speaking with won't turn violent by first reading their body language. Be smart, be safe, and avoid obviously mentally unstable people. They want to stick out like a sore thumb. It's not hard to identify them. To wrap this up, be merciful to yourself and others about things that you do not yet know. Don't be so quick to believe that another individual is stupid or evil because of the life that was handed to them, oftentimes one lacking emotional and/or intellectual support. People aren't just automatically bad just because of a viewpoint they may have, for the reasons I've stated. As in all things, begin with a desire to understand and put others first. And we'll all end up on the same path, together. Joyful. I've given the reasons someone can be pro-abortion, and if you're pro-life, I hope they've given you pause for mercy. And if you're pro-abortion, I hope you finally felt understood. Once again, I'm sorry for what you've been through. And the courage required to challenge your reality is massive. But I hope it's the first step on a healing journey. You are loved. You are valuable. You are not your past. I'm Regina Lux with Veritas on the Rocks. Ignite the truth and boldly go.